Well, hey there, and welcome to the EQPU podcast, where our heart and our desire is to equip you to grow and to become all that God has created you to be. And we are here for episode number 13, I believe.
Yes.
And this episode is special. We've maybe hinted at it a little bit in previous episodes about having some exciting things coming up. And this episode, it's not just Pastor John and I. We are joined by none other than Jacob Dugan.
Hello.
How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And if you don't know, Jake is the King of Culvers.
Mm-hmm. That's my title.
That's your title. One night during youth, I was talking about him for some reason in my message, and I called him that, and it's just kind of stuck in my head. So he's the King of Culvers, not really, but you own and operate the Culvers in Black River. You and your family obviously are super involved in everything here at Bridge Church, and you guys help and serve in all kinds of different areas. And we wanted to have you on because I think that you have a really healthy and I would say unique, although I wish that it wasn't maybe unique, but I think you have a really healthy perspective on what we're going to talk about today. And so I mentioned that you and your family, Mackenzie and your kids, and you obviously are really involved in everything that's going on in so many different things and areas and places. And you guys obviously have a lot of things on your own plate. You're managing Culvers and operating that. And you guys have 2 kids of your own. You have 2 kids that you've adopted, and you have another foster child. But yet you guys continue to make a point and make an effort to serve and to show up. And would you kind of talk through that a little bit? Tell us a little bit about why. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that you could come up with that you don't serve or that you don't do whatever you're doing, but you guys still make a point and an effort to do that. So could you talk a little bit about why you guys do that?
Yeah, at least for me. I know for me, I have an experience. I have a BC era, a before Christ era. Before Culvers era. There you go. And I remember what that was like. And I remember then finding Jesus and then what Jesus did in my life and like that transformation, what that's done for my heart. And so I just have not a goal, but like a heart for just like, I want to see people transform in that way as well too, as I've seen Jesus do it for me as well. So, sometimes that means, saying no to some things, but, a lot of times it ends up being a yes. So
yeah, no, I think that's good. How would you, as you think about just everything that you've got on your plate, how would you say that you manage all of that? Like, do you ever feel like you don't have anything to give? Do you ever wish like, I wish I didn't give any time to church. I wish I didn't do this or do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's easy to get in that mindset or in running low at like kind of energy wise as well. And in those moments, I need to look at my heart. Am I spending enough time building or being filled in my relationship with Jesus? Because if I am not, I'm going to run out on empty. And I know that if my heart isn't trying to do it by myself or for me or just, hey, I'm going to do this in Jesus's name, but I'm not going to really involve him in it, I'm going to run out eventually and I'm not going to be effective. And I'm going to find myself wondering what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's easy to serve because you know it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
But if you're not serving for the right reasons, you are going to run out of gas. Even in the aspect of being a pastor, it's just like there's times and moments where it's very stressful. There's a lot of things going on. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. If you're not involving Christ, if you're not doing it for the right reasons, it's very easy to say, you know what, I don't have time for this. I don't have energy for this. I have a lot of other things that I could do.
Yeah.
And so that's a very good point.
And I think that's good because this whole idea of serving, I think that if you went around and you talked to people and you asked people about it, it's like everybody, I think for the most part, would agree that, hey, it's a good idea to serve. It's a good idea to give. It's a good idea to, whatever, volunteer, do all those things. But at the same time, it's also pretty countercultural because culturally we've become so fixated and focused on ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's all about me, and I've got to do what's best for me, and I've got to make sure that I've got me time and I'm taking care of myself. And I maybe sound a little bit crash. I think that's a Pastor John word, crash.
Wow.
Or crass. Is it crass?
It's crass.
Crass. Okay. Well, that's why it's your word. I got it wrong.
A little bit rough.
Yeah. So that maybe
Another
sounds
one of those momisms. I'm still writing that book. All the sayings mom used to say.
Yeah. Well, so anyways, I think that might sound a little bit harsh. I think those things are important. Obviously, it's important to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But then if we think about, and you guys are already kind of talking about this and alluding to it a little bit, but if we think then about the example of Jesus and what he did on the cross, he didn't just say, oh, I'm going to be comfortable. He went from a place of comfortability to a place that was very, 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 very uncomfortable on the cross. And I think that it's so important that we see that we know that we understand that. How would you say in your life, again, because I think these ideas of me are so prevalent, and I think sometimes we think about those things without thinking about it. How have you kind of handled and managed some of those thoughts where it could be easy for you to say, hey, I just want to do what's best for me,
especially when you have 4 or 5 kids.
Right.
I mean, that's a tall order in of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you managed that? I mean, and that's not to say that it's not important to take care of yourself. I hope that that's not what's coming across. But I will say that I think sometimes even giving up or serving just a little bit is like, oh, then I'm neglecting myself. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think one, you can't say yes to everything. That's definitely not a healthy thing. And if you're saying yes to everything, then I would say that you're probably trying to like earn it. It needs to be freely. And you need to take care of the things that you need to take care of as well. But at the same time, one thing that I look at when I think of Jesus' example is he went all in. Like he was all in. Things got messy sometimes, but he was all in as well. And it really, once again, it starts with like that one-on-one time with Jesus. If you're not filled, if you're not spending time in prayer, it's easy to be like, it is about me. Even when you're serving, it's about me when you're, spending time in your Bible, when you're reading, when you're with people that surround you that are biblically sound, you're going to come to an understanding that I can't outserve God and I can't outserve Jesus. And when you can serve from that, I think you grow a lot more as well too in yourself. So you're serving, but you're also growing yourself as well too. And
I think that's great. And I think that perspective of how did you phrase it? I can't outserve God.
I can't outserve God.
Yeah, I can't outserve him. I think that's such a healthy perspective because I think it's easy for us to lose sight of that. Like we forget what God has done for us. And then that affects what we give. And it's like, well, he gave everything.
Yep.
And I hope that, as we're diving right into this conversation, I hope that this isn't just like doesn't feel like a sales pitch of like, oh, come and serve. Because that's not the goal. I think the goal and the heart is that we have all seen in our lives the impact that serving has had for us and what it's done for us.
Well, it also helps with our focus.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back to what culture says and you only focus on yourself and your needs, your family needs, your kids' needs, you can have an introspective view of life. And what did Jesus say? That we not only to consider our own interest, but the interest of others. Paul says that in Philippians. And so when you serve, even in, and that's where I think, we can talk about this, farther if it's necessary, but sometimes I think people say, well, I don't even know where to start. But even when you and I think we look at serving as in degrees. Well, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Maybe I just turn the lights on. So, well, in that, you don't see that as importance. But if you look at all the aspects that go on in a church or a ministry, there's some things that take place that people are just completely unaware of. Mm-hmm. And I think when you learn to serve, or when you even serve, even in a small capacity or a large capacity, that time serving is you're looking outward. You're seeing that, hey, this has an impact on all these people who come through these doors, or all these people who are coming to this event. And so it takes you away from the because we can get so introspective. Ever since that pandemic that happened a couple of years ago, we all of a sudden, it forced us to just, isolate and take care of ourselves. And now we're having to, as Christians, as believers, we're having to come back and say, okay, there's a world around us that needs to know about Christ. I might not be able to preach. Mm-hmm. I can. I mean, someone might say I might not be able to preach, or I might not be able to stand in front of people because I'm uncomfortable, but I can do some of these other things.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't know that. Sometimes it's just getting involved, like whether it be with the small group thing or just anyway in church, those things are going to naturally kind of start happening.
And that's what I was going to ask. When you started coming to church here and started getting involved, I mean, did you know exactly what you wanted to do, or you just, maybe talk a little bit about that?
No, I had no idea. I think we talk about the joke of like the chair ministry. Like that was me. I was like, I want to do something. Like, so like, I got excited about it. Like I can actually do something to help. And it was stacking of chairs here and there. Like it felt good. And then like, that gets you involved with something else. And then you see an opportunity, and then you have a conversation, and then we grew closer, and then, there's a bigger opportunity, and those types of things. Sometimes it's not right in your face. It just you just kind of start taking the right steps in the direction, and there will be something in front of you for you. It's going to be different for each person.
Well, and not to plug Growth Track, but if you were a part of the gifts class that we did a year ago, and did that have any bearing on what you're doing today, or did that kind of help clarify some things for you when it comes to, where you volunteer, where you put your effort in serving? Because obviously, if you don't have the gift of a certain thing, you're probably not going to, raise your hand and say, hey, I want to be a part of that. Did that have any bearing on that?
I think it definitely did. I think just like seeing something like, hey, I have something that like is necessary for the church. Like I have something that I can bring to the church that's going to help everyone out. I think that was really encouraging as well too. And just practical as well too, of like, hey, here's an area, and maybe here's a push in the right direction of what might work for you. And I think that's it. I think one thing I think about is like being doers of the word. I think a lot of times when we like think about like growing in our faith, we like knowledge, podcast, which podcasts are good. Don't turn us off.
Everybody just turned it off.
Yeah. But I think about when like I've found seeing like a period of like growth in myself. It's usually been attached to some type of serving as well. So it's that doing aspect of it. I think you can learn, you can talk about shooting basketballs, but once you actually go practice shooting baskets, you'll get a little bit better. And I think once again, that trust in relationship with Jesus is going to grow, and you'll be more comfortable with, maybe doing a little bit more growing in that as well too.
We talked about not being introspective, and there's a passage in Galatians chapter 5, verse 13 that says, "You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love." And so that, that's a good view to look at it. It's like we can be so indulged in our own flesh. And Paul's talking about, the things of the flesh, but sometimes the things of the flesh is selfishness. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm not going to serve because I don't have time, or I'm not going to do this because whatever. And so, that's a very good point, that, it helps us to, be the body of Christ.
Yeah. And I think going back to, you just kind of circled back to it, but I wanted to kind of loop back to it anyways. You brought up the thought or the idea that it kind of removes us from this like me focused idea. And then you kind of talked about how for you, it started with just, you joked about the chairs. I always think there's like these memes, youth group memes, about trying to pick up girls at youth group, and it's like the kid that's carrying like 8 chairs is he's trying to get their attention.
Alpha male.
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
Nice.
Anyways,
They didn't have memes when I was a youth pastor, so
no, well, sorry. But
that's it.
Anyway, so you were talking about that, about how serving does that. And I think that your story about how, you just started doing it. And I think that's so important because it's like, as we start doing it, it's like, if you just start, then all of a sudden some of the, I don't know what you want to call it, but you start to remove yourself from, okay, hey, it's not just all about me, right? And the world is bigger than me. And then as you did that, you started to be able to step into some different needs, some different areas. But it started with you just starting with chairs and starting small. And I think sometimes people don't realize that, or people want to start with the big thing. They want to have like the massive impact. They want to make a huge difference, which I think are good desires to have. But the first step isn't to say, okay, hey, what can I do to just make some sort of massive impact? It's like, well, what's the need? What's the need? And so I think that you did that really well. I don't know if we're going to just say something about that.
No, I think like when we, especially like early on and with your like relationship with Jesus, like you feel like all this potential power of like your relationship with Jesus. And you like have all these like things like, I'm going to reach like my lost family. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Yeah. And then a lot of times we kind of end up not really doing that. Yeah. And I think part of it is we're not taking the steps to do that. We have to start somewhere. Right. And so I think just taking those first couple steps and just keep doing that, it'll involve a lot of trust. And obviously doing it out of a place of freedom and not like trying to earn it. I think then that's when you really start like seeing a dynamic Jesus like lived through you, and like you can make a really true impact as well.
Yeah. Too. Yeah. No, I think that I hope too, I know we mentioned it a little bit already. I hope that this isn't like I hope this doesn't feel like a sales pitch of like, hey, you need to get involved at our church, because that's not really what we're saying. No. If you're listening to this and you're a part of another church or you live somewhere else, like serve there. We're not sitting here trying to say, hey, come and just only come and serve at our church. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is that it's not just about serving just to do tasks. It's that serving unlocks something for us. And you just kind of alluded to it. You were talking about freedom with serving. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how, and this might feel a little bit counterintuitive or maybe might sound a little bit odd to somebody who's listening, but I think we could agree that there is this sense of freedom that we're able to experience when we serve, when we give of ourselves. And so maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that and maybe your experience with some of that. And
yeah, I think about just the things that we've done as a family, Mackenzie and my wife and I. I think once again, it takes a focus off of us as well too. There's been times where maybe I haven't done anything big, but sometimes you find yourself doing it out of obligation or to try and make yourself look good or earn something out of it. And that's kind of like that check mark mentality. I'm kind of doing it, but my heart isn't into it. But I've found like when I've done something out of a place of like, I'm just like, Jesus gave this to me for free. Like I want others to feel that, like you're going to grow so much in your faith and your walk with Jesus.
And it also helps with your perspective too. And I'm not trying to take away from the spiritual aspect of it, but when you see, I think sometimes when we focus so much on ourselves, we can get negative and we can go down that trail. And when we get outside of ourselves and we do something for others, like Isaac already said, wherever you're at, find a place to serve. If you're not actively involved in a church, find a food pantry or a nursing home, someplace where you can just get outside of yourself and learn that you have something to give other people. And, in that, obviously if you're involved in a church, we would encourage you to serve in that capacity. but I think it also helps you understand that you have something to give. Because I think sometimes people don't serve because it's like, oh, what could little old me, do or benefit, or, how could someone benefit from my serving? Well, I hate to say it, that's an excuse.
Right.
And you're not going to experience the blessings of serving until you actually serve.
Yeah.
And when I think about like freedom and serving, I think about even in your message this weekend, it was like, I think you brought up like, you won't fall. And I remember one time Isaac was out of town and he had asked me to close worship in prayer. And like, I was ready for it. I went up there and I was going to bring up some promises that were found in the Bible. And I get up there and I get to that part.
You forgot.
My brain shuts off. I didn't forget. I did not forget the promises. I forgot everything. You would have asked me what my name was. There was nothing in my brain. And so I'm in front of the whole congregation. I am freaking out. I don't know when my brain's going to turn on. I don't know if anyone knows what's going on.
Reboot.
My wife, I talked to my wife after and she's like, I thought you were just kind of emotional about it. And I was like, ooh, I like brought myself to tears. And really I was just like, whoa. And so I pulled it together. I think I remember like one or two of the ones that I was going to say, finish up in prayer. And I walk off the stage and I was like, immediately, like just the thoughts were in my head, like just walk out the door. Just like, I didn't walk out the door.
I'm glad that you didn't walk out the door. I sat down
and I'm going to pull up my phone and tell Isaac, I'm never doing this again. And I was just like so distraught, but then like throughout your message and then like, just like, I felt like a softening and like, I remember like thinking to myself, like, I fell, like you let me fall. Like I felt like I didn't bring up like a note or anything like that because I was out of trust and you let me fall. And really like throughout that, like even now looking back, like it wasn't a fail. Like it was like Jesus did something in my heart after to where I was like, hey, like it's okay. Like you're fine. Like this is going to be okay. Like I think by the end of the day, maybe I laughed about it once. I think it's still hard to think about, but I think that freedom of just like, hey, like I was doing it and it's okay if I don't do it right 100% of the time, but I'm going to do it. And like in those moments where I might not do it great, I think I'm going to learn and grow as long as I can turn back and trust. As well.
I think we all strive to do everything that we do to perfect or to do it right, but we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw up. You're going to say the wrong things. You're going to say I've been preaching for over 30 years and I still, there's times where I get off the stage, like the business meeting last Sunday, I quoted some numbers and it didn't dawn on me. Nobody corrected me in the meeting. And then afterwards I'm at home sitting on the couch and Stephanie was asking me a little bit about the meeting and all of a sudden it dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? I misquoted some numbers and I'm just realizing it right now. And I felt like super stupid. Like, how could you do that? And I'm like, yeah. So it's easy to,
Like the one time when you were talking about Jackson County.
This is a good one.
You said that there were 90,000 people in Jackson.
I meant in a 90-mile radius. That's, so anyways.
There's like 21,000
yeah, just over 20,000 people. I do know that. It's just I
just forgot about it.
Yeah.
But I think that's good though. I think being able to remember that and I think sometimes there's this pressure when it comes to whatever it is. I know not everything, public speaking is kind of a different animal. I know that's something that like scares people. So when someone thinks of serving, they're not like, ooh, I'm going to go speak in front of people. But I do think in the other areas of serving, I like we've already touched on, there is this reality of I'm apprehensive because I'm afraid to fail.
Well, and I think what Jake was in what the question that I asked earlier, and I think what he said is that he just made the initial step of doing something. And then as he did the something, he started to discover his giftings and the things that, are more, he just started discovering the things that fit him better.
His personality. Yeah. And I think that's all part of it. And in knowing that, hey, there's grace for my mistakes. whatever that looks like,
or
whether
even if you're not serving, there's grace for our life.
Right.
I mean, our
Right.
lives are based on grace, and that carries over. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And I think part of this process, and I think this is maybe why this is also so important, is like God uses this not just so that we could impact other people, but God uses this so that he can change our hearts, so that he can speak to us, so that he can refine us, so that he can mold us, that he can shape us, and he can grow us. But that can't happen if we just are sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Yep.
We've got to get active with our faith.
Well, if you look at the story of Moses, how he came to leadership and leading the Israelites out of Egypt, he just didn't one day, graduate from leadership school and say,
Right.
okay, let's go. I mean, if you look at the story, he grew up in Pharaoh's house. He grew up, a prince. And when he encountered that Egyptian beating up that Hebrew, and he killed him and he buried him. And the next day he encounters two Hebrews fighting, and they say to him, "What are you going to do? You're going to kill us too?" So he still didn't have the influence of the people. He wasn't ready to be, a leader. And so he had to run off into the woods or the wilderness for 40 years because God was shaping him. And I think sometimes we want the immediate, I want the immediate gratification of serving this way or that way, but you got to start where God has you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like Moses, he almost in some ways was maybe trying to take matters into his own hands, trying to jump the gun a little bit and do that. Yeah, I think we have to be cautious of that. And our heart needs to be, I want to do whatever I can to make a difference for your kingdom, not I want to do whatever I think is best, and having that humility. But Jake, one of the things that you just mentioned as well was you said something about we want a dynamic Jesus, and I was talking about how we want our faith needs to lead us to action. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you mean by that, and how that might impact our view of all this?
Yeah, I think about just when we say yes to Jesus and we put trust in him, I think it's almost like you're going to the beach and you're with your kid and you're like, hey, this water's fun. Like, let's get in. And they get in and you're trying to get them a little bit further in because that's where the true fun is. I think a lot of times we get into the water and then we have this idea of like, I'm going to feel 100% fulfilled, or everything's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then we kind of just sit on like ankle deep water.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of are like, this isn't like exactly what I thought it was going to be. Like, this isn't what it was.
Yeah.
This isn't as glorified as I thought it was going to be.
And so like that part of that involves like, okay, like we need to continue like going deeper and deeper with Jesus. And once again, we're not getting ahead of ourselves or doing things that we're not ready for, or that we're not called to do, but just like that trust. And the more I think about Peter, like walking on water, like that's something that I try and like think about often. Like, is my trust in Jesus, like if that was Peter, like would I do it? Like, but like Jesus didn't pick up Peter and put him on the water. Like Peter had to get out of the boat and onto the water. Like, and like he was willing to do that partially because he had been with Jesus. Like he had this relationship with him. He had a trust. Like, so it's not just like jumping into the deep end, but you need to get there at some point. And a lot of that comes from obviously like knowledge about him, but a lot of it like from that experience of like doing things as well too. Then you can kind of grow and you can find yourself in the deep end and you'll feel more fulfilled and you'll feel closer to Jesus and you'll be able to make a lasting impact. And that doesn't mean you're going to be a pastor or something. It could.
Right.
But you're going to find like who you're supposed to be and you're going to be able to fulfill what God has for you as well, no matter what that is.
And I think that's kind of the fun part about it, about just saying yes to God is discovering some of those things that you're good at. I mean, scripture is obviously really, really clear that obviously we're all many parts, but we make up one body. We all have different functions. We all do different things. And that's not something I think sometimes we want to feel bad because we're like, oh, I want what that person has, or I can't do what that person or what that person can do. And so then we start to feel bad about ourselves and we think of ourselves as less than, or we're not as good as them. But it's like, hey, but they could also look back at you and say, well, there's something that they can do that I can't. And so I think that's kind of the beauty of all this, is like that discovery of kind of unpacking these gifts that God has placed inside of each of us. And I know you mentioned Growth Track, but we were working on recording that, and was just kind of, we were talking about some of the gifts and stuff, and just the reality that, you know, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, I'm not good at anything, or I don't have any gifts, the reality is that's just not true, right? Like, we all have gifts. We all have things that God has given to us. And
well, can I just share what God's word says in Ephesians 2:10? It says, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared up beforehand that we should walk in them.
Yeah.
And good works doesn't always mean in front of others or on a platform in front of a lectern. It just means
lectern.
Well, yeah, or pulpit, lectern, pulpit.
Gotcha,
Yeah, you know,
gotcha.
in the speaking world, it's called a lectern.
That was over my head.
That
was over your head too. Sorry,
person.
that dates me. But if you look at it from that standpoint, okay, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you are created in the image of Christ to do good works. You were created, and it's almost. I don't want to be that guy in the room, but it's almost like if we don't serve, we're disobeying God's word, because we were created to serve.
Right.
You know, and there's, a passage, and I can look it up, but there's also a passage in scripture where it says Christ did not come to be served, but to serve. And we are to follow that example. Jesus, God in flesh came. And he of anybody, he could have demanded, hey, serve me, I'm Jesus.
Right.
No, what did he do? He washed his disciples' feet. Now that's the ultimate demonstration of serving. But so as a believer in Jesus Christ, if I trust Christ with my life, what can I do to serve those around me? What can I do to serve my family, my spouse, my kids?
Yeah.
And I think about, like, if Jesus lived the most fulfilling life of anyone, like, if I want to live a fulfilling life, that's the example I should follow right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think the cool thing, and I hope that we're hitting this, is that, and we can talk a little bit more about this in a second, because we'll get there. But I think the cool thing about this is that when everybody comes together and when everybody says, hey, I'm in, like, I'm doing this, I'm going to use what I have. I might not have what Bob has, or I might not have what Susie has. I don't know. Sorry that those are the first two names that pop into my head, but
sorry, Bob and Susie.
Yeah, I might not have what they have, but that's okay. Cause God has given me what I need, and there's going to be room for me to grow, and I'm going to get better in some of these areas, but also God has given me some things right now that I can make a difference here and now. And I think that's the key in all this. It's like, and we talked about this earlier, but if you're just serving just to check a box and to just say, man,
it's like, it's the right thing to do.
I'm a good person. And it's like, then we're missing it.
Well, it's kind of like reading your Bible because you know you should, but you're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah. We're serving because Jesus is the hope of the world, and we know him, and we want other people to know him. Like,
and it's
that's
one of the
what
ways,
it's about.
It's one of the ways how we show others the love of Christ, through us, through our actions, through our works, through our deeds.
And I think about, like, some of the times that I've been, like, most encouraged by, like, another believer. Obviously, like, you guys have great messages, and, like, I get a lot from it, but it might not be, like, the biggest things. Like, it could be someone just like, you just notice someone. It could be like a smaller task, but like, they're doing it, like, wholeheartedly. They're doing it well. Like, they're doing it with the passion, and like, you can just see, like,
that they really enjoy what they're doing.
I've had those moments, and just, like, I am, like, so encouraged by that.
Yeah. I think that's really important too, because we're really quick to think of things in terms of levels.
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, if I'm not getting the glory, or if I'm not, and I'm not necessarily saying that everybody feels this way, because I know there's plenty of people who are like, keep me out of the spotlight. But I think we're really quick to think of things in terms of levels. But then again, if you really think about it, there's a lot of things that we maybe view in high esteem or high regard that would not happen or would not take place if it weren't for some of the
behind the scenes,
the things that aren't as visible, the things that people don't see as much.
Yeah.
And those things are just as important. And it's just learning and figuring out, okay, hey, where's my place? What do I do? And again, I just think it all comes back to, it's so much more than just serving just to do it. It's like we have the greatest message. We have hope. We have what people are looking for, even if they don't know what they're looking for. And we can give that to them, but it starts with us being active. It starts with us doing something. We don't have to do everything. So as we kind of start to wrap up this conversation, I know we've talked about a lot, but to the person who's listening, that's like, okay, where do I start? Like, I want to serve, I want to help, I want to make a difference, but I don't really know where to start. I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what I'm supposed to help with, or I don't know how this all works. Like, what should I do? What would you, either of you can jump in and say, but what would you say to the person that's wondering about that?
I would just say, just ask. I think in a smaller church, and I'm not saying we're a smaller church, but we're anyways, a rural church, but it's easy to have this idea, this mindset, well, it's all being taken care of. Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at stats, they say 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. And so it may be taken care of, but maybe some of those people are being doubled up on. Maybe, maybe Jake's doing more than one thing, and he really likes this one thing, but he's also volunteering and helping in another area that somebody else could be doing.
Right.
And so it's like, there's, even if you don't like to be in front of people, don't like to be on stage, there's all kinds of things that, we could help you with, and if you don't go to church here, we could give you ideas about what you could do in your own community or your own church or where you live. It's just, I think just boils down to is just simply asking. Mm-hmm. Whether you talk to somebody at the welcome counter here at Bridge Church, or whether you talk to Pastor Isaac or myself and just say, hey, I'm interested in serving, but this is, I'm perfectly fine with somebody putting parameters on, say, well, I don't want to be in front of people. I don't want,
Right. Because that's the thing. It's like as far as serving in the context of church, it's like we want people to be operating in their gifts and operating in their strengths. And I think one of the big things with starting to serve that it's important is, I know it can be easy to say, oh, like you got to serve at church, which I mean, I think that you do. That's not what I'm getting at. But I think it starts with just this posture, this heart posture of being a servant in every area of your life. Like, not just, oh, church is the place that I serve, but then everywhere else, like I just go and do what I want. I live how I want. I say what I want. I treat people the way that I want. It's like, no, I need to ask God to help me to have this heart posture of being a servant.
That's a good point.
And saying, God, it doesn't matter if I'm at church. It doesn't matter if I'm at home. It doesn't matter if I'm at work. It doesn't matter where I am. God, I'm here to serve you. Because again, we've already talked about it, but that's what this is all about. It's not about just serving so that we can fill all these spots and have all these positions and things like that. It's like, no, we're serving so that other people can know God and see him through us and through our actions. And that's what it's all about. And so to somebody who's wondering or asking, where do I start? Start with, God, give me a servant's heart. God, help me to see people the way that you see them. Point. Help me to love them the way that you love them. Help me to use the things that you have placed inside of me to serve the people around me wherever I'm at, whether it's at church, whether it's at home, school, work, whatever it is. And as we do that, it's going to, like we talked about at the beginning, all of a sudden, we're no longer just thinking about ourselves, but we're seeing the needs of people around us. And all of a sudden we're able to flow in this and operate and we're doing more things than maybe we ever would have thought. But it just starts with that attitude and that posture.
Yeah. And I think about it as like an iceberg, like the serving is what you're going to see. Like that's the part that you see. Like there's so much more underneath, like the hard check of it.
Yeah.
Like just like that, your prayer time, like your time with Jesus, like that trust. And if you're doing things the right way, if your heart's in the right place, it's going to, you're going to flourish in that. So,
yeah, I think that's good. And I hope that that's what's coming across. I like that about the iceberg too, because I think that's one of the, and we've already alluded to it a little bit or talked about it, but that's one of the struggles when it comes to serving is we're so concerned about the optics. We're so concerned about what it looks like from the outside, or who's going to be thinking what of us, or if I have the capabilities. And it's like, well, that's just a small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. And I hope that it's coming across that, again, our hope with this isn't just to say, oh, hey, we want everybody, and we want people.
Well, it's not that we want, I think what you're trying to say, and that we don't want people to serve just because we want less to do. No, we want people to serve because we know there's a benefit and a blessing in it that comes from the act of serving.
Right.
And that you will be blessed for doing it. And so we know that because we all, have participated in that. And so that's, exactly. And I like Isaac's point about if you're not serving already in the areas that you already exist in, your home, your job, your school, you got to start there, because if you don't see those areas, if you look at your job as just a place that pays you for the things that you do, yeah, that's true. But how could you, as a believer in Jesus Christ, how can you as a Christian serve in that capacity to go above and beyond?
Mm-hmm.
And even not because you're looking for more pay might come from that, because, that's a rare thing in today's culture. But if you need to start in those areas. So that's a very good point. So I'm thankful that you pointed that out.
And again, I think as we wrap up, I think like if we think about serving serving really is giving. It's giving of our time. It's giving of our energy. It's giving of our resources. And again, that's what he did for us.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave everything. He laid down his life. And so now we should have this desire that, hey, because of what Jesus has done for me, I want other people to see and know and experience this love that he has for them, the plans that he has for them, the purpose that he has for them. And I want to make a difference for his kingdom. And I think that's the heart, that's the desire behind all this. Again, it's not to just check a box. And so again, if you're thinking about, man, where do I start? Like we've already said, just start. God, would you show me the places and the areas? Would you help me to serve and have this heart posture in all these areas? Because again, I think even going all the way back to what you were talking about, how you just said yes, and then now there's been more things that have opened up. It's like, and maybe we talked about this on the last episode, but you think about the parable where the parable of the talents, where the master gives them, and he gives what was it, 5, 3, 1, or was it 10, 5, 1?
It was 5, 2, 1.
Oh, 5, 2, 1. So the master gives 5, 2, and 1, and the 5 and the 2 they doubled it, and the person who had the 1 buried it, and he gave more to the ones who doubled it. It's like God's going to give you more opportunities as you continue to say yes and take advantage of the opportunities that he gives you now. Yeah. And so again, we just have to see those. And so I don't know, we're kind of coming to a close here. I don't know if you guys have anything else that you would want to encourage anybody that's listening to this, or anything that you would want to add that you maybe didn't get a chance to say before we wrap up.
I think serving comes from also a place of surrender as well too. I just think about like that growth, or think about our new, whether it be our mission statement, know God, find freedom, discover your purpose, and make a difference.
Yeah.
I think something that we fail to think about is making a difference sometimes gets messy, or sometimes involves you, or should involve some type of fear, or you're going to need to trust God to make it happen. Because you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And
that's good.
The deeper you get, you're going to need to continue to trust on God and not our own understanding. I think about so many times we feel like we know, and then we graduate out of things. We graduate out of like how the gospel makes us like feel. Like it's like, that's for like, I'm going to tell other people about it, but I don't feel the need for it, or I can kind of do things on my own, and then we kind of just, I'll do it for you, Jesus, but I'm not going to do it with you. Like that surrender of like, we're going to do it together. I can only do it with you, and I'm going to do it for you as well. And just surrendering to. Sometimes that's going to lead you to places that you didn't think that you'd be.
Right.
I didn't think. One thing I'm afraid of talking on a stage. Kind of maybe why I froze up there, but I felt like I was supposed to do it, so I did it, and like I was rewarded from it. Maybe not in the way that I thought I would be, but in a different way. Like I think, just that trust of like it's going to be an active thing when we discover our purpose and we make a difference. Like it's going to be an active thing, and it's going to involve a double down of trust and surrender as well too.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good.
Point.
You got anything?
Nope. I would just say, just do it. Just find something. And start somewhere. And as Jake already said, maybe it will open the door and the horizon to something you never ever thought you could even do.
And I think about some of the times I've been like, okay, what direction do you want me to do? Do you want me to go, God, or what do you want me to do here? Like sometimes, I know Isaac, you said it really well. Sometimes we're seeking a hand and not a face. I know sometimes like I've found like the best direction of where do I start or where do I go here? Like by like being intentional about like seeking God's face. So if you feel like you don't know where you're supposed to go, how to start or something, I would say like just once again, just double down with like that, your Bible time, that prayer time, just like those times of like just letting God search you, and like your time spent with him, and that'll lead in the right direction. Sometimes we rely on ourselves to figure it out too much, and then we ask God for help when we just kind of need to surrender and spend that time. And if we're going to do that, it's going to be shown to us.
And you're right. I think you're right on. And it's like if we just focus on seeking him and knowing him and keeping our heart close to his, I don't think that there's going to be any shortage of opportunities in front of us. And so I think that's so good.
So, the last thing that I say, in all of this is that God is looking more so for our obedience than our capacity. He can develop those things in you, but he can't develop them if you aren't obedient.
Right. And
if you don't say yes to God.
And we're close-handed and close-fisted.
Yeah, no, that's good. So our challenge to you to this is, again, our point in this isn't to say, hey, you gotta come serve here at Bridge Church. Obviously, if you're a part of our church, we want you to serve because of the impact and the difference that it can make here and obviously in your own life. But if you're somewhere else, it's like, what is it that God is asking you to do? I think for anybody that's listening, it's like, what is it that I need to do? How do I need to grow in terms of serving? What is it that God is maybe asking me to do that might feel a little bit uncomfortable right now, but I just need to say yes and be obedient and allow God to work and use me. And so we would challenge you to think about that, and to seek God and to, above anything else, just ask God to give you this heart posture to serve in whatever capacity, whatever sphere of influence you find yourself in. And just say, God, I want to follow your example. I want to serve and I want to love the people around me well so that I can make a difference for your kingdom and for your glory. And so we would just challenge you to think about that and to ask God, what are you showing me right now? What do you need me to do? But Jake, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. It was fun to have you on. And as always, if you found this episode helpful, if you've been enjoying the EQPU podcast, we just ask that you would like, share, subscribe, comment, send this to a friend, send this to somebody that you might feel would benefit from us or from it. That helps us get the word out there, because we don't do this for us. We don't do this because we think people want to listen to us. We do this because we want to be a blessing and hopefully a benefit to those who listen. And so if you would do that, we would really appreciate it. But again, we want to thank you for joining us on episode 13 of the EQPU podcast, where our heart and our desire is to equip you to grow and to become all that God has created you to be. And Jake, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely. And we will see you on the next episode.